Hello and welcome, everybody. I have a very special guest today. Always have special guests. I have Rachell coming to us from Denver, Colorado, and we are going to talk about her endo story. Her pronouns are she, her. Rachell, thank you so much for coming. Welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I am doing well. Thank you. Today's my day off and I'm about to fly out to Montana to see my family. So
Oh,
I'm just having a great day. Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful. So great. Well, good. Well, we appreciate you being here before you're about to travel. I always like to start off the show with just tell us a little bit about yourself, your life, anything you want to share outside of endo.
I practice nursing, so I've been a nurse for about 6 years. I'm very passionate about mental health and I speak to new grad nurses about like preventing burnout, things like that. So super passionate about that. And I have amazing apartment here in Denver. I love it. It's my home now. I'm actually not traveling as much anymore, which is actually kind of settling to me. And in my spare time, I love live music, like going to Red Rocks, or actually, I started doing pole dancing and it's super fun.
And like a crazy good workout, I hear like it's hard.
Yeah, I actually have my like in my kitchen, in my like living room, my pole just got delivered. So I'm like gonna set it up next week.
So fun. That's awesome. And the fact that you get to go see live music at Red Rocks, it is so beautiful there. For anyone who's listening and people who are outside of the States, it's an amphitheater where you can see live music, but it's literally built into what the name is, like Red Rocks. Like it's gorgeous. It's Google it if you've never seen it before. It is a stunning place for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna wait till September to get to like to the end of this month to go to my first show, and then my friend like impromptu had tickets, and they were like, "Here, come with me," and I was like, "Yes!" And
Yes.
oh my goodness, like the acoustics and everything, I'm like, I could go here all the time.
Yeah, I've done some hiking around there even too. There's a bunch of hikes around
Mhm.
there. It's just such a beautiful space. Well, that's great.
Oh yeah.
What a great place for you to see live music. That's awesome. Well, let's dive into, endo and endo story and kind of your journey with it. We were chatting a little bit just so the listeners know before we jumped on, and sounds like you've had a long road to diagnosis, but I always like to start at the beginning and when did you start to experience any type of symptom if you had any or pain? Tell us just about, younger time that maybe you started to really realize something was off.
hmm Yeah, I would say the most memorable time. So I started my period around like 13, 14. I would say like yeah, around that age. And um, I got on birth control very soon before because of acne. And it wasn't ever really because of cramps, but they kind of like added that in there. But the most memorable time is I remember when I was in my seventh grade um, math class and I was sitting there and I was like, I am like not okay. I'm having these cramps, but I was like, is this supposed to feel like this bad? Like I literally feel like I'm gonna vomit. Like I
Oh,
feel like I'm gonna vomit. And
right.
I had to like run to the bathroom and like breathe. And I was like, this is like not okay. And I asked my friends, I was like, do you have cramps? They're like, yeah, it's whatever. I'm like, it's not, it's not whatever. Like, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And I told my mom, and she's like, "Yeah, I have those too. Like, it's just like something we have to deal with." Like, and I was like, "Okay, like this is really bad though." And I have so that was my first like big memory of that, and I did have to like go home from school and stuff. And I just remember getting like these like terrible headaches, like terrible. Like I would go home after school and just like they would say it was like related to my hormones, but I didn't know what that meant. They were just like, "Oh yeah, like you're just going through puberty," and I would go home after school and like I'm super active and social, but I would just like lay in bed. And I was like, this is like not a healthy lifestyle.
Right.
Um, yeah, so I was on the pill for a while, and
Did that
then the
help
story,
seem to help like with symptoms or headaches or anything? I mean, I guess it's kind of hard to tell because you started it earlier than maybe some
right?
of the symptoms would have come about. But I mean, after that, like that one time in seventh grade, was it like that each month or would it just like kind of come and go?
I would say for the most part, it was pretty steadily crappy.
Yeah.
Um, And though, what I've realized with my endo is like it gets worse. The symptoms and the pain gets worse as like stress or like other things happen.
Mhm.
So I would say like if we're thinking like plateau, right? Like
Yeah.
shitty. Excuse my language. I don't know.
No, so you're allowed to swear here.
Okay, I was gonna, it's like shitty, and then like sometimes real shitty.
Yeah,
Like
right.
it was never like, oh, this is like a normal like
Right.
flowery
Like I'm gonna go
period.
for a run. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
like no. And like I was in track and cheerleading, and so I would like force myself to do stuff, but I would like literally like I was like, this is not like I feel like I'm gonna pass out. Like
Yeah.
this is not
Yeah.
okay. Um
So, but you
and
just kind of continued like through seventh grade, eighth grade to just be like, okay, this is what I deal with. Like accepted it.
Yes, 100%. I just accepted it. I just thought, I mean, my family has an extensive history of like bad periods.
Sure.
So I was like, yeah, everybody's like, this is just how it is. And I was like, I guess like y'all are kind of crazy, but
Yeah.
that I guess that this is how it is. So I just didn't know any differently. I didn't
Yeah.
know that there was a better quality of life or anything like that.
I mean, I was exactly the same way. And I always say, like, I remember asking friends or like seeing if friends had it as bad. And there was a part of me that thought, like, maybe they just hide it. Like, I kind of don't really tell everyone. So maybe they're behind closed doors, wrapped around their toilet, like during high school, because I wasn't. I just assumed it happened to I really just assumed it happened to everyone, or I just had bad luck because very similar to you, every person in my family that I talked to about it was like, oh, I had that too. And so I just, okay, it was just, okay, I'll press on. So what happened? Like you're going through this, you're just kind of living day-to-day life. Were you missing things? Was there a point where you were like, no, something's wrong?
So the big I it's an extensive history as in like I have tried like I had gone to the doctor so many times for like weird pains. My mom brought me to the ER one time because she thought I had appendicitis. Actually, I've been to the ER a couple times because they thought I had appendicitis. They never found anything. It was like 3 in the morning. They did all these scans every time. And I'm like, I promise I'm not a drug seeker.
Right.
Um, and it was just like or
Yeah.
like a hypochondriac, you know, like just like
Yes.
and it just felt so like out of place. And so I've been to many doctors, especially for like breakthrough bleeding.
Hmm.
So there was one time where I was on, I mean, I've tried, you name the birth control, I probably tried it.
Yeah.
Like I think the only birth control I haven't tried was the NuvaRing. Like I have tried a lot of pills, the bar in the arm, the depot shot, an IUD. I mean,
All of
it's
it.
just all of it. And I bled for, I just kept bleeding. And so at some point they were like, they had me on the depot shot and the pill. And I was like, this is excessive. Yeah. Because I was
Wow.
bleeding through, I mean, I bled through for like 5 straight months before.
Oh my
And yeah,
goodness.
yeah. And it was bad. It really affected, like, I mean, I was a teenager. It affected my social, sexual, like, you know, like
Of
all of that
course.
life. And yeah, well, I was in college at that point. Yeah. And it really affected me. And, so that was kind of when I like really started questioning it. I was like, you know, there's something wrong. Like, I don't know. Like, this is just like, I've been told to be abstinent before. I've been told like to like take certain medication that pretty much like stops my period completely and like, you know, complete like different things like that. And
And just the switching of
what,
like birth controls and the hormones and all of that is just so hard on your body and your
So
mental.
ridiculous.
You mentioned in the beginning you're passionate about mental health, like just all that switching and different doses of hormones and all of that, which of course you didn't know. I very similar. I didn't know that either. And I was wondering, like, one time when I was also in college, like, why am I like so like extremely emotional? And it was like I was on testing all these different pills, and it was a lot. So you're at this point, you're like, okay, something is off. And like you said, you were going to a bunch of doctor's appointments. What were your like major symptoms besides breakthrough bleeding, very heavy bleeding? What other things were going on that was like triggering you to go to the doctor?
I would say a lot of like random like pains, like definitely terrible, terrible cramps, but
Yeah.
then like also like I would get like flank pain or like bladder pain and like be like, this is just weird.
Wow.
What really prompted me like the most recent when I got like my like tentative diagnosis was I like, okay, so I will say like every time I've gotten like pelvic exams, like terrible. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, it's like I know that they're not fun for a lot of people, but like it was like I was like about to cry. And they're
Yeah.
like, are you okay? And I'm like, obviously like something I've been checked for like pelvic inflammatory disease, like I've had ridiculous like yeast infections, like just so many like gynecological history that's like I'm like something's wrong. So I got an IUD. And this is what prompted a lot of it. So I got an IUD, but it was like Kyleena and it had a lower dose hormone. So I went into the doctor and I told her I started like what really happened was rectal pain.
Yes.
Um Bad. Like I was sitting in like I was in the shower, I remember one day, and I just like it literally felt like a knife was shoved up there. And I like
Yeah.
went to my knees and I was like, am
Yeah.
I like dying? Like,
Yeah.
I think I'm dying right now.
Right. Yes. I mean, I've experienced, I know the pain you're talking about. I've experienced maybe something similar, but yes, where like I'd like
Yeah.
hold onto the walls and put like a wall on my face because same. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, was this
oh, go ahead.
after the IUD was inserted or before? After.
It was, so I had a couple times where I had a little bit of rectal pain and I
Hmm.
like kind of ignored it, right?
Yeah.
Like I was like, I've always had bowel issues, like always had bowel issues.
That's
Um,
another
and
symptom.
yeah, I always had bowel issues. So I was just like, oh, whatever, like this is just part of it. I don't know. But when it got so bad that I like, it was like literally I was at work and I couldn't like function and things like that. But it was more, I got it a couple times before the IUD and then I got it after the IUD. So I thought it was the IUD.
Sure.
So I went into the doctor and we did a scan and all this stuff. And she was like, the IUD is perfectly placed. It's nothing's wrong with it. And I was like, yeah, but this is just so weird. And she was like, I started having pain with sex. I couldn't have sex without crying. I was starting to have flank pain, like bad. I was having bladder pain to the point where like it was like felt like razor blades were on my bladder. Um, and like it was weird because everybody asked like, does you have pain when you pee? And I'm like, not really, but it feels like after I pee it's like spasms, like it's
Yes.
like deep, like it's like honestly like you got a deep sunburn on your bladder. Like that's
Yeah.
one of the best descriptions I could explain it as.
Yeah.
um so I went to the doctor and I told her all this and she did a pelvic exam and she was like, have you like ever been like, have you ever talked about endometriosis? And I'm like, no, I don't even know what that is. And she
Right.
was like, well, since you have been on so many different birth controls, a lot of them more like I think I don't remember if it was progesterone or one of them covers up the symptoms more than um normal. And she said with this low dose, like IUDs can help symptoms, but for other people is what I've heard. But I was on a lower dose one, and she said that that's probably why symptoms are more
Becoming
like
more apparent.
becoming more apparent. And she
Yeah.
was like, you need to find like a specialist. and she referred me to a specialist, but I found, have you heard of Nancy's Nook?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Yeah. So I saw all the research on that.
And it
And
helped to find. So backing up just a little bit, after your
yeah,
doctor told you like it could be, I think it could be endometriosis, did you then just like go home and research and then find Nancy's Nook? Because like you said, you're like, I never heard that word before.
I
Or like, what was
was
your
very,
process? Because like I
mhm.
remember like once I found it on Google, I was like, oh my gosh, so many years. I had no idea.
Yes. So, I was lucky enough to have a couple really good friends. One friend actually was like the jump starter of it all. She's a nurse as well as me. And she was like, I don't know, like, I think you have endometriosis. And so I kind of heard of it, I guess, but it wasn't like very, like, I didn't ever know of it. And
Sure.
she's like, I think you have that. And I was like, that's weird. Like, I don't even know what that is. So, but then when I did get told by another doctor, my best friend that I'm actually going to see right now in Montana, she has endometriosis. And
Wow.
she was like, hey, yeah, this sounds super similar, or like at least like I relate to what you're saying. You should check out this Facebook group
How
because
crazy, I mean, so crazy how like
yeah,
that all were like your
I was
best
lucky.
friend. Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow.
Honestly, I was really lucky because she was like, Rachell, there's so much, like, she was like, don't Google it right now. She
Right.
was like, there's so much information. Like, you can, but like, there's a lot of
Right.
misinformation
Yes.
like out there. Like, you can Google like certain things that like you could go down a rabbit hole of
Yeah.
like, oh, you should have kids and you should go on Lupron
Yes. Yes.
and never have a period again. And I'm like, this is like a lot. So
Yes.
yeah, so the doctor that like tentatively diagnosed me referred me to somebody, and I'm really glad I didn't go to that. I
Is
looked
this,
up
were you
like,
still in Montana? Where were you at this time? Like, were you in Montana or were you traveling? Because, and were you like a nurse, like a full nurse, full-time nurse at this time? And I'm sure being a nurse, and there's actually several people that I know with endometriosis that are nurses and that I've interviewed, but just the fact that they were like, I was a nurse. How did I not know about this? Like, I know I just asked you like so many questions, but at that time, were you already a nurse? And then where were you located where you were trying to find medical care?
yes. So I was already a nurse, and I had been for probably about more than 4 years.
Okay.
I At that point I stopped traveling for a little bit. I was in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
Um, Very grateful I was there actually.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
they have a couple different amazing centers for endometriosis and reproductive care. So honestly, I'm really grateful that I was there. It was insane. But
Yeah.
yeah, my nursing friends, all of us, like a lot of them, when I even bring up endometriosis, they're like, what? And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's when like, I explain it and they're like, I didn't even know. Like, what? This is crazy. I'm like,
I know, I
so
know, I know. Still, like to this day, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's 2022. How do we not have? I mean, the awareness is a lot better, but I don't want to get on that
yeah.
soapbox right now. But yeah, so I could go on forever. But so okay, so your best friend referred you to Nancy's Nook. You learned all things endometriosis. At that time, were you just like, what I just remember being like, whoa, once I started to connect all the dots of all my symptoms, I was like, this is all related to this one thing that I thought I just had painful cramps. Like once I had the full picture, it blew my mind. It really did. Like
Hmm.
I'm sure that's how you felt.
Yeah, so that it was really crazy to me. I mean, just hearing other people's stories and like
Yeah.
different um bowel symptoms and bladder symptoms and pain with intercourse and painful period. It was just like I was like, this is me. Like I was like,
Yeah.
this has to be it. So then I found a movie called Endo What, And I watched it and I cried. I
Yeah.
mean, I bawled.
Yeah.
I was like, I mean, even now I'll get teary eyed. Like, I was like, this is like what I've been waiting for. Like,
Yeah.
this is like what I knew there was something wrong. And
Yeah.
people were, honestly, some people were telling me I was crazy. Like, kind of, like they were
Yeah.
implying it. Like, they're like, oh, you're fine. And I'm like, I'm not fine.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Yeah.
not. And I just remember I told my mom, I was like, you need to watch this movie with me. And she did. And she was like, oh my gosh, like, I think I have this too. Like, this
Yeah.
is, like so genetic. And um, I just, I really, but there was two parts to me, right? There was a part that was so excited about, like, it was like mind blown.
Yeah.
But then there was this part that was like, but I'm not formally diagnosed yet.
Yeah. Right. I'm,
You know,
mhm. The
yeah,
fear of
yeah,
what if it isn't this?
yeah, yeah. So I, I wasn't formally diagnosed. So I was like, what happens? Like, what if I go through this whole process and they told me, I'm just like an
Yes.
anxious person. So I was like, what if I go through this whole process and they tell me like, oh, it's nothing, just like they always have been when I do all these scans and do all
Yeah.
this stuff. And they're like, oh, you're fine. And I'm like, but something is wrong and I know it.
Well, I'm so happy you brought that up because that is such a common fear with people who have endo, because I think it is because the years of being told what you're experiencing is normal. And now you're like, okay, I'm so excited. I think I have this. But the fear of them going in for surgery and then saying, oh, nothing's wrong. That is so common. You said I'm an anxious person. No, I think you're anxious because for so many years you were like, it's normal, it's normal, it's normal. And now you find out it actually might be this disease. And then what if it's not? And then it's like, oh my gosh. But I always tell people, like, when your intuition knows, like you literally just said you knew something was wrong, like your gut told you, haha, pun intended, but like it really did. So I'm so glad you brought that point up, because so many people who are listening to this podcast, I know, have felt that way and or feeling that way if they haven't been diagnosed yet. So thank you for bringing that up, because it is a very, like, almost justifying time before you actually get diagnosed, but you read all the symptoms and then very fearful. So, because what if it's
Mm-hmm.
not? What if it's not? Like the what ifs, the what I,
Yeah.
so what did you do next?
Okay. I then researched, I researched like the different doctors in Atlanta. And that was at a time where I was super stressed out and I was having all these like teens, and I just like honestly wasn't like honestly mentally stable.
Yeah.
Like, I was researching all this stuff and I was like, I can't, like, there, insurance, reimbursement, appeals, like all this stuff. And I was like so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I like couldn't handle it for a while. So like for a couple months I had to like have professional help and different stuff with my mental health. I think that's why I'm so I advocate for it so much. But I do want people to understand that like it's okay. Like, it's like it is overwhelming. I mean, to
Yes.
like have all of this stuff come at you, and then you're like, I have to make this decision, I have to do all this stuff, like what is going to happen, like
Mhm.
how am I going to pay these people, like what am I going to do, like
Yeah.
am I even going to be seen? So it was really like, it was actually like a really eye-opening, like honestly, I had like a quarter life crisis.
Yeah.
So it like a couple months like went in between that and like self-care and like reintroducing all of that. And then once I was finally like more stable, I was like, I have to do this because this is a source of so much anxiety and like pain in my life.
Well, and
Sorry.
at 25, it's I'm also grateful that you brought that up because it's so overwhelming. So you said quarter life crisis, but at 25, like, this is a lot of heavy stuff to deal with when, like, most of your friends are like going out and having fun. They don't have to think about will I have enough money? Do I have a chronic illness? Like it's pretty heavy, and it's a lot, especially when you take in all the information initially. It's very overwhelming. And I hear this from patients a lot, that they need to take space sometimes, because like making the appointments and doing all these things, it's on top of your like normal daily life. It's like almost having a second full-time job trying to take care of yourself.
Mm,
So I think it's okay to like sometimes put a pause and like step back from it for a little bit and then reassess, right? Like what are my next, okay, tomorrow I'm just going to do this one thing, instead of feeling like I have to do this all right now. And that's the type of personality I have. And sometimes I have to pump the brakes and be like, okay, I'm just going to call this one place to make a CAT scan appointment. And then I'm going to take a week off. Like, right? I mean, I feel like that probably was helpful for you to digest. Yeah.
yes. So like extremely like you said, I really had time to like, I really needed to process it. And I am really glad I gave myself that time. And I'm also really glad that I did make a list. I did say, today I'm going to do this. If I'm going to get a hold of these doctors, and then that's my list, I'm going to check it off.
Yeah.
Because like something like I'm advocating for myself, but me advocating for myself doesn't look like me doing 30 things and
Right.
not having self-care or like any brain space at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had to take some time before I found my doctor.
Yeah. Okay. So you found a doctor.
Yes. So I found a doctor. So he actually, this Dr. Congalasa, um, he trained underneath Dr. Servi. I can't say his name, Dr. Servino, under at the
Cinervo.
center. Cernervo,
Cinervo.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I can never, under, he trained directly under him for like the Center of Care of Endometriosis in Atlanta. I was so grateful I found him, because the biggest thing for me was pay. I'm millennial, like I can't
Right.
like, like paying all this money. So what I found with Dr. Congalasa is he had a pay limit, like he had a cap of how
Oh,
much the surgery would be. Yeah, it was $7,000, I think the cap was.
yeah. Yes.
And they had payment plans,
Oh,
and
I'm so grateful you shared
like
that.
they
Yeah.
like, yeah, it was honestly it was amazing. I mean, and the office, oh my gosh, I walk in there and I'm like, this is like a freaking home. Like I like feel like I should have been here. Like I'm so grateful I'm here. And the staff was amazing. He was super like, he took the time to sit down with me and be like, hey, like I think I had an initial consult with the PA. So I had the initial consult with the PA, and she was like very like, this is highly looking like endometriosis. I sent them all my paperwork, everything. And then what you do is you have a surgical consult with him, just to like see,
Right.
what, if that's the route you want to go. And at that
Sure.
time, that was definitely the route that I was looking into.
Yeah.
Um, and I had a consult with him, and he just was so caring, and like actually saw me as a person, and like
Yeah.
sat down with me and like answered all my questions. I had so many after
Yeah.
all these years.
For sure.
And yeah, it was just so such a change. Like I'm like, oh, there's like actually
People who
hope.
understand and will listen. And I'm sure I felt this when I finally found like doctors who understood, but like that just got it. Like you didn't need to go into like, they just were like, yep, yep, yeah. Like they not, not maybe that fast, but like they just get it, which
Mm-hmm.
was very hard to find for me.
Yeah, I mean, I was like blown away, honestly.
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, this sounds exactly. And I'm like, what? Like, I didn't even know of any of this until like
Right.
recently.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, yeah, like, I'm surprised somebody hasn't mentioned, like, I don't know if they said it like this, but they were kind of implying, like, you know,
Yeah.
you've had it. You've had it
Right.
for a while.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
um, yeah, so it was really great. And he wasn't
Yeah.
like pressuring in surgery or anything. He was just like, hey, this is what I do.
Right.
And this is the studies. And it was actually, endometriosis excision surgery.
Mhm.
Which I wanted instead of ablation.
Yeah.
Um, so I followed, like, I like decided to follow through the surgery.
Okay. And when was that? What year did you have surgery in?
June 2021.
Okay, so you're just over a year.
Yes.
Okay, how did it go? Like,
Yeah.
how was it? I mean, I'm sure you were nervous going into it. How did it go? How are you feeling now? All the things.
So I have an interesting perspective because I am a pre-op nurse, so I get people ready for surgery. Um, and I was at I was at a different hospital in Atlanta. So like,
Right.
I knew of the hospital that I was going to, and I knew, like,
So that
different
probably
ins and
helped with
outs.
like your nerves for sure because you knew what to expect, right?
I think it did. I definitely, like, I'm somebody that, like, I don't get nervous until like the last second. Like
Yeah.
I'm like chilling, and then I'm like sitting there in like the hospital bay, and she starts my IV, and I'm like, and I'm like, and they're like, "Hey, you're ready to go," and I was like, "Okay," and then they gave me this like Versed, like the sedation like medicine. So I was like, "Oh, like, okay, like, woo, let's
I'm
go."
so happy.
Uh,
Yeah.
but I was looking up like ways to prepare, like what to like,
Yeah.
what to bring or what to like expect. I really thought like Nancy Snook did a really good job with like explaining like what to expect for surgery. Like,
Yeah.
everybody's different, but I knew that they were going to go in laparoscopically. So I
Right.
knew that when they do that, they pump you up with CO2,
Mhm.
and you're going to have like uncomfortable like belly pain or like
Mhm.
bloating, and like you can even have like some like shoulder pain, like,
Mhm.
it like goes at different places. So I think honestly that was the most helpful thing, that I knew that,
Yes.
because I know so many patients when they come to me and they're like, I'm having this like shoulder pain, and I used to, like, as a nurse, I was like, oh my gosh, you're having a heart attack, and I'm like, no, actually, like, you need to move, like you
Yeah.
need to walk around, you need to release that gas.
Mhm.
And that was one of the most helpful things for me. I mean, I did look like I was 6 months pregnant after the
Yeah.
surgery, for sure,
And it
at
hurt. I
least.
mean, I had really bad shoulder. It hurts. Like the shoulder
Yeah.
pain is tough. Like, but
Yeah.
heat helps it. And like you said, like
Yeah.
walking around to like move it is so important. Okay, so
Yeah.
how was your recovery and how are you feeling and all of that?
So my recovery was actually, I had it on my bowel, my bladder, my appendix, and my rectum. So it was very interesting in the fact of like, it was like kind of on and off. Like, I kind of think I went through it with like more of a grace situation, or not a grace, a grit situation. Like, I was just like, okay, like, this is like, we're accepting this, and like, this is what we're doing to get to this point. It wasn't at that point, I felt like, to me, when I look back, it wasn't terrible. But I
Mhm.
think it was because like I just had that mindset. I
Mhm.
definitely do think it was kind of rough a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, like, looking back, like, I definitely felt. I mean, I had pictures of my stomach; it was huge. I was super uncomfortable. I would walk around and I'd have to like stop.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I couldn't. I mean, like, sexual. I couldn't. I couldn't have sex for I don't know how long. It was a
Yeah.
while. And then when I did start having it, like, I was like, oh, like, scared. Like, I
Yeah.
was like scared that
Yeah.
something was gonna like happen, like,
Right.
or I was injuring something.
Right.
Um, and the biggest thing for me was the bladder. It was always the bladder. I could tell, like, it was like, they said that the symptoms, like, it's pretty like but you have to take time to heal. So
Yeah.
it's like your symptoms like go away, but they also like kind of like it's sensitive. So you're gonna feel some of the same
Yeah.
things, like I was feeling like the bladder pain. I mean, they just like scraped my bladder,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so I was having that and I was like kind of nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, like, is that all the way gone? I mean, he showed me pictures. It was like extensive. Like they got a lot of it. Like
Yeah.
it's, um, so I would say the recovery for me, I mean, I think the biggest thing is like having support
Mhm.
around you, or at least for me, it really was. I mean, my
Yeah.
mom stayed with me at that time. I think I moved apartments too. So it was kind of crazy. I was like
Huh.
recovering and doing it.
Oh my
And I was like,
gosh.
yeah,
That's a
yeah.
lot.
So
That's a lot.
I know I don't recommend for anybody out there. Do not recommend doing that.
No.
It was like
Try and
really
stay in
ridiculous.
one place. Yes.
Yeah, like please, like try to like make sure your lease isn't up right when you get surgery.
Yes.
um,
Yes.
yeah, because they were like, you have to leave, and I'm like, oh god, okay.
She said surgery. I just had pretty major surgery here. Oh my goodness. Well, so
Yes.
how are you feeling now? I mean, it's been over a year, and
So
how's everything? How's your pain? How's your everything?
I will say it took a couple of periods in general, like it to kind of like normalize out or stable out. I would say like the first couple were kind of rough after that, but
Mhm.
then after that, like my quality of life, I will go into like how I'm feeling now, but my quality of life for this year from June to like recently has been like insanely improved. Like
Good.
my period is not 7 days and heavy anymore. It's more like 3 4 days, like pretty regular. Well,
Wonderful.
besides the point, I'll get into that.
Yeah.
But and then it's just been, I mean, I've been able to like have sex fine. I've been able to like, just live my life and be like not even honestly not even think about it, like kind of be grateful, but like it's not a thing. It
Yeah.
wasn't a thing.
Incredible. That's incredible.
What I have recently discovered, I think, is, so I've been to pelvic floor therapy a couple times. I had to have a meeting with the PA from Dr. Kongwasa's office recently because the last couple cycles I've been having really intense cramps and bladder pain, and it
Yeah.
freaked me out.
Yeah.
It freaked me out bad. I was like, oh my gosh, I have it again. Like this is crazy. Like they
Yeah.
said, like I have a really low chance of like it coming, like the actually growing back after the surgery, but like some, like, and but I'm really, really happy that I didn't go to somebody else here yet. I think staying with the same doctor if you can,
Yeah.
that understands you, because I had a meeting with them and she was like, what you're describing to me really sounds like pelvic floor dysfunction. What you're going to do is pelvic floor physical therapy, and if that doesn't work, and like we talked about turmeric, so I'm going to start taking turmeric and like really go like the anti-inflammatory route, like less carbs, less sugar,
Hmm.
like just kind of being more aware of that.
Yeah.
um and then stress levels, I mean, honestly, it's so, if I want to share anything with anybody is like, it's okay that like sometimes symptoms come back, but like maybe like, and it's hard to not jump to the biggest conclusion. Like it's hard to be like, oh my gosh,
And
I
goes
like thought I
back
had it.
for sure.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
sure.
So but I just like, I had a friend die recently, so I've been under a lot of stress, and I guess if anything, I'm kind of grateful sometimes for, I'm not like, it's so weird to say this, but it makes me more aware of my body,
Yeah.
and like
Yes.
it makes me more like, oh, you have to pay attention to this, like you have to take care of yourself, like you
Yeah.
have to go to pelvic floor therapy, you need to decrease your stress, you need to eat cleaner, and
Hmm.
like, but it's a lot, but
Yeah.
it's also like, I just am happy that, I just think it's so interesting, like the anxiety around endo, and like how I thought, like immediately I told my family, it was like, endo's back, it's back, I don't want to get surgery right now, I need to go the more natural route, and I need to do all this stuff, and I need to find a naturopath, and I need to do this XYZ, and they were like, Rachell, like take a step back, like reassess the situation, and like go see the person you saw because you trust them.
Mhm. It's great advice.
It
It's
was great.
the perfect advice. And I understand how you felt in that situation
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And I think a lot of people who
Yeah.
are listening have been there probably multiple times.
Yeah. I mean, and to say, not to say it doesn't come back. I
No,
mean,
for
it
sure.
can,
Yeah.
and and it's it's just very like I kind of like when I was talking to my cousin, I said like, "Hey, I was like, I bet they recommend pelvic floor physical therapy," and she's like, "Why don't you want to do that?" And I was like, "I've already done it a couple times." She's like, "Rachell, it's not like, you got it, if sometimes you got to go. Like
Yeah.
sometimes it's like you re-injure your knee, you're gonna go again."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just like it's so funny because I was acting like I was too good for this pelvic floor physical therapy, and it's like it's helped me every time, like it's
Right.
been amazing every time,
Right.
and I'm like, oh, like I'm good, like I'm some expert, like no.
It's hard, it's hard, and it's hard, like, I don't know, like as soon as I have like a pain or twinge or like sciatic, I'm very much the same way. We're like, oh my gosh, it's back. And I think that comes from like just so many years of struggling with the pain that you're just, for me personally, I think it's like the fear for me of like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I don't know if I can go through this again. And like you said, sometimes it's just like, I'm glad that you talked to like your fit, like take a step back, try these other things first. Like I think it's really challenging to think that way after so many years of struggling and not having a diagnosis. And it's hard. I mean, and I think it's
Mm-hmm.
okay to like admit like, yeah, I went right to that place because it's hard and I've been through a lot and I'm going to slow my roll. And now I'm going to just try pelvic floor therapy and take it day by day, step by step. It's just the best way to approach it, even though it's very challenging.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that because I think it's definitely like I definitely think that being like gentle with myself and like acknowledging my feelings are real and
Yeah.
that's okay,
Yeah.
and like it's like acknowledging it and like giving myself some grace around it and like not reacting to them right away either,
Yeah.
because I think it's like for me it's really hard to go down I mean it's really easy to go down a rabbit hole,
Yes. I
um
understand this
because
very well.
yeah.
Totally understand. Totally understand. Okay. So that's what you're doing now. You're gonna like try some more pelvic floor therapy, but you're still feeling pretty well overall.
Yes, I would say so. Like I did, like it's mostly just around my cycle. When it was really bad, I like had it all the time.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting like how much I know my body to a point where like I had bladder pain the night before my cycle and I was like, I bet I have my cycle tomorrow.
And you
And
knew.
like my
Yeah.
partner was like, and yeah, my partner was like, what? And I was like, yeah, like I bet it comes. And then it came. Like
Yep.
it's just so it's just so interesting. But I will say the thing that really made me reach out to a doctor is like just like I was I was doing an epidural with a patient and all of a sudden my face got pale because I was having such bad cramps. And yeah,
Yeah.
like my face got pale and I was about to throw up and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, when my patient asks me if I'm okay, I need to go see a doctor."
Yeah.
Like I need
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, it's
I think just like
hard.
being
You're on your feet all
yeah.
day, running around. It's hard on your body too, especially when you're on your cycle and in pain. That's tough.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really, really tough. Yeah.
It really is, and what I'm glad I know is like definitely with pelvic floor dysfunction and different things like that, and just like so many like history of like trauma and then surgery. It's just
Mhm.
like really easy to not easy, but in my opinion, like have those pelvic muscles just like really like tense up and
Yeah.
like not like you know like really work through a lot of that. So I think that that's going to be beneficial, and I will tell people that like definitely it can take some time to find a pelvic floor therapist that like one covers your insurance, one that you mesh well, one that does like internal as well.
Mhm.
I mean, like it's really worth it when you do find that. Like definitely keep trying and calling people. And I know it's a lot, but it's definitely, I've gone through the process like 3 times now. And every time I'm like, oh, this is a lot to like find the actual like one that does all the things and takes insurance. But it's really beneficial to me.
Yeah.
It was to me, at
Yeah.
least.
I think that's super great advice and I appreciate it so much. Is there anything else that you want to share with anybody based on, just your experiences, what you've been through, or things that have really worked for you before we wrap up?
I will say, um, I don't know. I think this is kind of like a common theme, but if I could say like a message for anybody, I would say like you're not alone in this, because I felt really alone um, at some points. And I just think that like finding a community and like finding Nancy's Nook in this community is amazing. Um, and like you're not crazy and you're not alone is like the biggest thing that I would say. And just like going with your intuition and like your gut, and like you, if you know something's wrong, like you are probably right. And like also you, like it's okay to follow that and like advocate for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And keep fighting for yourself, even though I know it can be very, very challenging to do that, especially when you feel so sick. And I'm sure I sound like a broken record to everybody who's listening, but you have, unfortunately, still right now, because the awareness is still not great for this disease, you have to fight for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah,
so yeah,
I totally agree with that. I think that it's, and like even now, I mean, like I thought I was done fighting,
yeah,
and even now I'm like, I know I need to advocate for myself. I need to say like this is what's going on. This is what's going on.
yeah,
And I think sometimes it can get discouraging, but at the end of the day, like knowing that you have community and support around you is super, at least important to me, and it really helped me like be like I'm not alone in this, and like I have other people that have symptoms, and
yeah.
like like I have resources, and just like, yeah, I don't know. I
You,
definitely that, yeah.
you have people that you can like go vent to, even if you don't know them, like on social media, or like you said in Nancy's Nook or something like that. You can find someone who will get it, that you don't have to have this long explanation. You can have almost a shorthand with like, I don't feel, and they understand. And that's
Hmm.
so huge. And I totally agree with that. And I just have one last question that I thought of. Has this experience changed anything about how you work as a nurse? Like, has it changed
Yeah.
like how maybe if a patient is saying something? I'm just curious because working in the medical field and then kind of going through this challenging experience yourself, I was just curious if it changed how you approach nursing.
100%. Yeah. 100%. I feel like I've always had empathy, but I feel like I have the utmost empathy for patients going into surgery now. Um, People I was taking, especially after my surgery and in Atlanta and stuff, I was taking care of a lot of people that had the diagnosis of endometriosis, and we would get talking, and it was just so cool to understand and be like, and and kind of give them resources and be like,
Yeah,
hey, listen, like this is what helped me. I mean, I'm not giving you advice, but this is what I did. And like maybe because a lot of them were just so discouraged.
yeah,
And if anything, like it kind of, my story, to me, it helped me relate with patients more, and like pain that is undescribable, because pain is a very taboo topic in healthcare. Pain seeking, not believing in pain, pain that's not like, that you can't describe or explain or like prove.
yeah,
It's really helped me with that for sure, because there's a lot of things in healthcare. A lot of people are like, oh, they're just pain seeking. And it's like, actually, that's not what's happening. Like, there's
yeah.
something going on. So I really think that I'm more than grateful that it's given me kind of hope too.
Mm.
Um, like hope my patients will like, like do better and get better, and I've seen things work. And I just, yeah, I really, really appreciate for how much struggle it's been. It's been like, looking back, it's definitely it improved my emotional intelligence and empathy for sure.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I feel the same exact way. I think it's made me a better leader, and I don't work in the medical space at all, but it's made me a better leader to my team that I work with, because I just it, if they're like, I'm feeling this, or I have a migraine or something, I'm just like, take the day off. Like I know that they're not just saying that because they like want to go to a pool party. Who knows? Maybe they are, but I can just see it on people. I see pain on people's faces differently now. I can see it. Like I can almost sense it. It's pretty crazy. So, well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing that. And thank you for working in the medical community and helping patients, because that's a huge thing that we all need, is more empathetic people. So thank you so much for coming on
Mhm.
and sharing your story. I appreciate it.
Of course. I really appreciate this experience. Yeah, I've been looking forward to it. I love your podcast and your community and everything. So I just think, I don't know, I just really, really appreciate this.
Oh, thank you.